So let's start thinking about having a secret identity. What comes with that? Well, it seems obvious to me, and I'm sure it seems obvious to you as well, that part and parcel to having a secret identity is a willingness to engage in at least some dissembling or obfuscating behavior in order to protect your identity. In other words, there's no point in having a secret identity if you don't make any effort whatsoever to keep your identity secret. But now we're on interesting moral terrain immediately, because we've already understood some moral theories as making the claim of saying that under no circumstances can you engage in lying. But is keeping a secret the same thing as lying? I want to start by just mentioning something right from out of the gates, and that's the following. When we did our module on normative ethical theories, I mentioned that I thought it was very important, even if we didn't settle on one theory, to engage in systematic, critical, and clear-headed thinking about what moral principles might guide all of our behavior and how they might help us answer questions about what to do in the future. But I don't want you to become too wedded to those moral theories. In other words, I want you to avoid the trap of thinking that we have these moral theories out there, and now every time a moral question emerges, we have to plug it into one of those theories in order to make sense of it. That's not the way we're going to be proceeding in this course. The theories are there. They're there to be understood. They're there to be used as we find them beneficial to be used. But we're also not going to spend all of our time trying to shoehorn everything into one of those theories. That said, let's just remind ourselves that for Kant and for Kantian deontology, it's completely impermissible to ever engage in lying. Now again, I'm putting an asterisk by this. It's not clear that having a secret identity is the same thing as lying, but let's talk about Kant's view on this from the start. So for Kant, the thought was, if you recall, that lying is impermissible because we can't universalize the principle of lying in a way that doesn't lead to a kind of incoherence. I can't say that I should lie when it suits me without being able to universalize it, but then everyone would be disposed to lie when it suits them, and the foundations for trust and any kind of normative communication would evaporate. That's the general claim. But you can also get this rejection of lying out of other formulations of the categorical imperative. For instance, the formula that we looked at, the formula of humanity of respect for persons, says that we need to treat people as ends in themselves and not as mere means. How do we get a mandate not to lie out of that? Well, the Kantian idea here is just that I don't respect you as an end in yourself and as a mere means when I lie to you, because importantly, I undermine your autonomy. I undermine your ability to be able to choose for yourself the course of actions that you think are important. How do I do that? I do that because by lying to you, by deceiving you, I'm keeping really important information from you. And when we put people into a state of ignorance, when we purposely keep people from having relevant information at their disposal, we are curtailing their ability to engage in autonomous action. We are eliminating certain possibilities that might be open to them because they don't know that it's open to them. If you understand that general point, then you can see how, for Kantian, I suggest, whether it's lying or just other kinds of dissembling behavior, like hiding your true identity from the people around you or hiding your superhero exploits, that the principle behind it's the same. Kant's not going to be on board with this because it rejects people's autonomy. Spider-Man, that is Peter Parker, if he really respected the people around him, would tell them that he's Spider-Man. Peter Parker would go to his Aunt May, who's in charge of his care, and say, look, this is what I do. I got bitten by a radioactive spider. I got all these powers. I decided to spin webs and fight crime. This is what I do, and I need you to help me with it. Same thing with Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy or the people in his life that matter to him. Minimally, we'll get to the public in a bit. By not telling them this information, whether he straight up lies to them or not, by keeping them in the dark about this, you might think a Kantian would say, it's really problematic because it curtails their ability to make autonomous decisions on their own about how to interact with Peter Parker. So we at least have at first blush a Kantian rejection of any kind of dissembling, whether it's a straight-up lie or not. Let's put Kant aside for a moment and return to this idea of maintaining secret identity. In order to succeed at doing this, in order for Matt Murdock, for example, to keep the fact that he's the daredevil a secret from the people that he works with and the people that he cares about, at least a good number of them, in order for Bruce Wayne to keep a secret from many of the people that he works with and is in charge with that he's Batman, in order for Clark Kent, Superman, to keep from Lois Lane and other people that he is this superhero, a variety of different activities have to be done. I've called these dissembling activities. I want to divide them broadly into two different kinds of things that could be done to keep one's secret. One is to engage in what I'm going to call truthful misleading, and the other is what I'm going to call lying. Truthful misleading is distinct from lying, and I don't mean to suggest that these two things exhaust the ways that you can maintain your secret identity, but they're pretty obvious ways in which you can maintain your secret identity. Lying is just what we think it is, but we're going to unpack it in a little bit because that's what philosophers do. Truthful misleading is a little different, though, and some people have different opinions about whether truthful misleading is less morally problematic than lying. So let's look at what these might be and unpack their notions and then apply some critical thinking to the question, is one better or worse than the other? Might there be better or worse ways, morally speaking, in protecting one's secret identity? I want to advertise that much of my thinking on this matter, the matter about truthful misleading versus lying, has been informed by a wonderful book by Jennifer Saul called Lying, Misleading, and What is Said. It's short, it's a fantastic exercise in deep and interesting analytic philosophy, and I highly recommend it. And much of what I'll be saying here is at least inspired by Jennifer Saul's work in that book. Let's do some work on the concept of lying first. Philosophers really do spend some time trying to unpack many of our rich and deep concepts, like that of lying. They recognize that we have a working understanding of what this is, what it is to lie. It serves us in many instances, but we do think it's important to unpack that and to try to get a better grip of what it is that we're talking about. You will hear in philosophical literature a distinction between a concept and a conception. What is a concept? Philosophers have fundamental disagreement about what a concept is because philosophers like to disagree with each other. It's sort of what we're paid to do. But on some people's account, a concept is nothing more than a linguistic or quasi-mental entity that serves the purpose of helping us catalog the world and catalog actions in the world. We deploy this concept in our thinking and in our language, and it covers a lot of different instances of certain kinds. A conception is a more effortful, worked-out understanding of what it is that our concepts are trying to get at. One way that I like to think about it, and I advertise in advance that this may not be the way that others think about it, our concepts are sloppy in many ways. We develop them to help divide the world into manageable pieces. They don't need to be perfect. They don't need to have an answer to every possible instance. They're just how we help navigate the world. They're practically formed. But a conception is supposed to be tighter than that, neater than that, cleaner than that. We want to really get at exactly what it is that we're talking about. And so a conception of something is always going to be one step removed from our concept of it. We have a concept of lying. And I would imagine that that concept of lying is, saying things, false things in order to get people to believe false things. But we want to develop, I suggest, a conception of lying. We want to go through that work to just see what we really are committed to when we're committed to thinking about something being a lie. And that's what we're going to try to do now. All right, so to start, let's recognize a few things. First of all, we talk loosely about lying all the time. For instance, sometimes when you just say something false, and you want to then correct yourself, you'll be like, oh, I lied there, I meant this. But you didn't really lie there, you just said something false. So just to do some ground clearing, let's acknowledge that merely saying something false is not sufficient to count as lying. We can think of innumerable examples in which someone has said something false, but they're not lying. Imagine Wonder Woman at the end of World War I. She just helped put an end to this ghastly, gruesome, world-devastating war, and she says, and this is not just a hope, but a belief, she says, this surely will be the last time that humanity engages in such a devastating conflict. I mean, it is a hope of hers, but I have to imagine at the time that she thinks humans have learned their lesson. They're never going to do this again. Well, as we know, Wonder Woman has grown quite discouraged over many, many years with our capacity to find new and interesting ways to decide to destroy each other. It turns out that what she said was false. This wasn't the last war that we were going to fight, the last devastating war that we were going to fight. Some years later, World War II starts. So Wonder Woman, for very good reasons, says something false at the end of World War I. Wonder Woman got something wrong. She is a goddess, but she's not infallible. None of us are infallible. So we certainly don't want to count as lying every instance in which we get something wrong and say something false through no malfeasance on our part, we just didn't get the facts right. So step number one, whatever it is that goes into something being a lie, it's not enough to just point to the fact that what you said was false. So where is our concept of lying? Where does it start? I would suggest that it starts with this idea of saying something false with the intention of getting someone to believe it as true. That's a good place to start about what it is to lie. I tell you something false with the intention of getting you to believe it as true. Turns out, though, that when we really start thinking about it, that's a little bit too sloppy. Take the following example. In Alan Moore's powerful and controversial graphic novel, The Killing Joke, the Joker decides that it's really important to prove to Batman that all it takes is one bad day to turn a perfectly good and normal person into someone, well, like the Joker. He schemes this terrible plot where he decides to invade the home of Barbara Gordon and her father, Jim Gordon, Commissioner Gordon. He shoots Barbara through the spine, undresses her, takes pictures of her naked body, kidnaps Gordon, takes him to an amusement park, strips him down, and then shows him pictures of his bleeding naked daughter in order to push him over the edge. Sound funny? It's not. And a lot of people haven't viewed it as funny. It really shows just how absolutely and completely demented the Joker is. He assaults Barbara Gordon, he assaults Commissioner Gordon, and he does it for a completely insane reason, just to prove a point that it takes a bad day to turn someone into someone like him. We're going to be spending some time on the Joker in this course, but for now, I want to just point out the following. He wants to break Gordon. So, he shoots Barbara, leaves her to die, and takes Gordon away. So suppose that the Joker, really interested in pushing Gordon over the edge, decides that as he's putting him through this lunatic roller coaster and showing him these pictures of his daughter, the Joker tells Gordon, "Your daughter is dead. I killed her. I saw her die on the way out." Now, the Joker doesn't believe this to be true. He knows that he shot Barbara Gordon. She may die, but he also knows she's tough. Honestly, he doesn't care. But he decides to deceive Gordon. He wants him to believe that his daughter's dead to really put the nail in the coffin of putting him over the edge. So he says, "Your daughter is dead," with the intention to deceive him. Now, as we know from reading the comic, Barbara Gordon doesn't die. And so it looks as though this is a classic instance of the Joker lying to Gordon in order to accomplish some or other end. But suppose in a different version of the comic book, Barbara Gordon does die. It's just that the Joker doesn't know it. He doesn't know that she died, but he left her dying. And so suppose in this version of the comic book, the Joker says to Gordon, "Your daughter's dead," with the intention to deceive him, but he actually ends up saying something true because Barbara Gordon actually died. It strikes me, and I'm inviting you to think about this yourself, that we'd still want to say that the Joker was lying in this instance, even though the world turned out differently, even though what he said was true. And I think that we would want to say that the Joker is lying in this instance because he believes that what he's saying is false. That seems to be the essence of what makes this an instance of lying. He believes that Barbara Gordon is alive. He says that she's dead in order to deceive Commissioner Gordon. It's the belief that's doing the work here, not the actual truth of what he's saying or not. Now, you might be wanting to push the pause button right now and go, "What? I don't share your intuition," or "No, you're wrong," or "Huh?" That's fine. This is how philosophers argue. We come up with examples and we invite you to think about it a certain way, and some of you agree with it and some of you don't. I'm going to proceed, though, as though this example does some work. It does some work for me, at least. It makes me think that if I'm really trying to get at a good conception of lying, I need to move away from the idea of lying being tied to saying something actually false, and instead think about it more as, say, saying something you believe to be false with the intention of getting someone to believe it as true. Okay, so suppose that's right, for the sake of argument. Suppose we have a better understanding of lying now. It doesn't actually have to be saying something false, but you have to believe that it's false, and you have to have the intention of getting someone to believe it as true. Is that right, though? Do you have to have the intention of getting someone to believe it as true? So let's consider the following example. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's Avengers, and here comes Loki with an alien horde behind him, all armed to the teeth in advanced alien weaponry, and they're descending upon New York City. Now, in our version of this story, let's say, Loki descends upon New York City with this alien horde, all armed to the teeth, all looking like they're about to wage a massive war, and Loki, with them behind him, announces to the public, "I come in peace, I mean you no harm." My intuition in this case is to say, liar, liar, pants on fire, Loki. You are absolutely telling a lie right now. And I'm betting that, at least for some of you, your intuition is to call Loki a liar there too. And let's think about how we've thought about lying so far. Does Loki believe that he comes in peace? No, he absolutely does not believe that he comes in peace. But does he intend to deceive us? Now, to me, that's a harder question. Loki has absolutely zero faith in humanity. He disregards us. He thinks he's above us. Quite frankly, he wants to rule us. So he doesn't have a very promising view or a very happy view of the human race. All the same, I don't think he thinks we're that stupid. It would be shocking to me to think that Loki really thought he was going to pull one over on us, descending from the skies with an alien horde behind him and getting us to believe that he was coming in peace. No, whatever he's doing there is a lie, but it's a lie in which the intent isn't to deceive. So I suggest, and I am again following the tremendous work of Jennifer Saul on this, I suggest that we relax the condition where you need to intend to deceive in order to count as lying. I think it's better stated that in order to lie, you say something that you believe is false in a context in which the truth is the norm. It's what we might call, what Jennifer calls a warranting context. And saying it in that context is enough for it to count as a lie, so long as those other conditions are met, even if there's no plausible intention to deceive.